Welcome back to Planning Phase Syndicate Universe Extended. Yes, this is our after hours show where we talk about everything and anything Star Wars based on, I don't know, whatever we feel is prominent or preeminent at the time. Tonight, for episode 28 of the Universe Extended, we're going to be discussing Visions Season 2 in full. So, if you have not seen Season 2 of Visions, here's your cue to duck on out. I'm waiting. I don't hear any doors leaving. So good. Welcome to episode 28 of Universe Extended. Joining me as my co-host tonight to discuss Visions Season 2 is JJ, the I Love the Lions guy. How are you tonight, sir?
Excited to go over some Star Wars Visions, which I will preface, I think this was by far the better season out of the two so far. I really enjoyed season 2.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think so far this set felt better, and maybe a little bit it's because it's the Sith, right? Like, and it's a little bit more darker themed than before, and that's to me that's good. But that's, again, not everybody agrees with me. But I like this stuff and obviously the dark side probably more than I should. I mean, look at me, I'm a Separatist player for X-Wing first and an Empire player second. So there's that. Anyway, so we thought we would discuss Visions too. So normally, if you are new to our Universe Extended series, we kind of recap episodic episodes or movies from Star Wars or books. This time we thought we'd do Vision, and I know I can already hear Deslin clamoring in the background. Why have you not done Bad Batch Season 2? And I promise you we will do that. So that is the next one on our agenda. We will cover Bad Batch Season 2 right after Visions. So we don't know if it'll be next week, the week after, or maybe even the week after that. But yeah. So anyway, just wanted to cover Vision Season 2. We thought it was so good. Vision Season 2 has 9 episodes, right, JJ?
Yes, correct.
And it's a little bit darker, or feels a little bit darker than it had before.
Yeah, definitely. There was a lot more tones for dealing with like the dark side in general, at least exploring that part of the dark side a little bit more so than last season, right? Because last season we get a little bit of mix between, like, you know, the everyday lives of certain people and the effects of the Empire, rather than, you know, going more into the story of like the light and dark side of the Force. And we certainly see a lot more lightsaber battles and such for this particular season here. So it was nice to see that. The other big change for this season too is that they definitely went a little more international when in terms of reaching out to different studios from around the globe to depict an episode for Star Wars and their interpretation of the material. And it was great to see the influences and references for their local culture reflect into their episodes for this season.
Yeah, and I think Star Wars traditionally has always been a pretty anti-colonialistic and anti-imperialistic type show, right? And I think, Visions allows for, while not canon, but allows for different artists to take their interpretation of what Star Wars means to them. This kind of feels like, I'm trying to remember of the lady's name for that cooking show that I really like. But she travels the worlds and talks to people of different cultures and finds out like what dish is from your culture, and it's called Taste of the Nation. And I can't remember the lady's name.
With Lashma Pot. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, she's good. Yeah.
Yeah, you say her name because I butcher names, but I love her show is like one of my favorite shows. Between the way she presents it and like I like food shows. I won't lie, and maybe it's because I look like this. But I do like food shows. So anyway, so that's what, like, Star Wars has always kind of been those type of themes, and I feel that this season specifically allowed for artists to focus on um allowing different cultures to influence how they see Star Wars. And we talk about Star Wars being inclusive, but sometimes it doesn't always feel like that. I mean, like Finn in the show didn't get a great fair shot. They didn't treat the actor very well. And I know X-Wing did because Finn is 3-point bullshit menace on the table to play against. But in cinema, they have not always been characteristically accommodating in that. And I think that they've tried to do some of those things over the last, let's just say 15, 20 years. And this Visions, because it's all these brings all these other cultures in, they get to tell their own story. Um, and I will admit that like there is the one story where it's essentially looking at India and some of these different, fashions and things like that from there. And I can't remember the episode number. It's like 8 or 9.
7. Yeah.
7.
The Golek, Bandits of Golek. Yeah.
That one, like that episode is really, really touching because it brings apart the whole piece of how we don't have to do these in order, right? We can do however order we want.
Yeah.
Okay. So 7 brings apart that whole conversation about what that culture is in Star Wars, right? But it still brings the themes, right? They still have to hide. It's still the people hunting Jedi. They're still hunting Jedi, and it's this whole underground railroad. And if we think about it, and if you think about like our world is this huge, huge thing. Like how many times are you going to travel to every country and every capital in the country and all these other crazy things in your life that you're just not. So you're never going to be able to experience everything. And if you think about Star Wars, it's like quadrupled million times that,
Yeah, exactly.
But we live on Earth. So being able to represent that feel, but with references to different cultures on Earth is just, I don't know, like it was very touching to me. And I felt a lot closer to this season. Even with its departure from a few of the anime style pieces I really liked from Vision 1.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let's start with the first episode, which was titled Sith. This one's definitely a really interesting episode. Number one, the animation style was just way different than what we've seen before for like season 1. And we see this young girl that has a cybernetic arm and has a little ball droid, which, by the way, that was by far my favorite droid out of every other droid in Star Wars so far. Like that
even
little
over
ball
BB?
droid.
Even over BB?
Oh, even over BB, man. And the reason for it is the part where eventually she gets out and she's being hunted by a Sith master with 2 bounty hunter droids. And the droid takes out this giant like cannon and headshots one of the droids right in front of it. And that was like the perfect part. Like just seeing the cutie little ball droid all of a sudden turn into like this killer, and it was great. I definitely love the play with the artwork and how it kind of delivers that story, and we come to find out that she is a former Sith apprentice that eventually became redeemed and is trying to reconcile her life after being in the darkness, and her essentially trying to eliminate darkness from her without realizing that it's a part of her, and just trying to find that balance with her. And I thought the storytelling with the art in the background was phenomenal, especially that whole lightsaber battle with the Sith Master. I think it was some of the best work that we've seen so far.
Yeah, and with like that lightsaber battle, like and it basically you have the master going either kill me or don't. But you have the energy. You can become the master. And she's like, I do not want to become the master, but sometimes killing the evil is the only necessary way to move on,
to get rid of it. Yep.
Yeah. And this story talks about her struggle to not embrace the way of the Sith. And it brings up a good question. Like, if you kill a Sith Lord, do you become a Sith Lord then? Like Like, it brings an inconsistency discussion that we always just avoid. Like, if you were a Sith apprentice and you kill a Sith master, you're now the Sith Lord, right? You're just going to automatically, because you had to tap into your anger and blah, blah, but that's just stupid. And this actually makes fun of that, right?
Yeah, they're basically using Mandalorian rules, right? It's like the title Sith Master essentially is the dark saber, right? Whoever killed it last gains the title of it.
Yeah, and what she's saying is, I don't want to kill you, but if you make me kill you, I'm still not going to become a Sith Lord. I'm not going to do that, man. Like, fuck off.
Yeah, yeah, and I love the little quip at the end, right? She's like, "Well, he was right about one thing. I am a master," and she's like, "Of my own destiny." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's a great way to like for her to like end that piece there for her story." I thought that was pretty awesome there. The one thing too is the vehicle that she uses to go out and explore. That looks really similar to Grievous's vehicle, right? That we saw in episode 3 after when he escapes Obi-Wan when the clones start attacking.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, that vehicle was pretty awesome, especially when she turned around and took out the guns to gun down one of the bounty hunter droids. That was awesome. Just to see that bit of artwork and how they played that into the story. That was really cool there.
yeah. So
yeah, go ahead.
how is so? Give us a scale, JJ, of how we're ranking these, and then
So 1 to 10, I think this is the best here. I think episode 1 was a solid 8 for me.
All right, and I would give it a 9. I enjoyed it immensely, like quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, what's the next episode you want to cover?
All right, so we'll just go down the list here. So we're scrolling down here to episode number 2. Episode number 2 here is titled Screecher's Reach here. So it's a story of these 4 kids. One of them obviously having desires to basically not being happy with the life of, I guess, of being a child working in a mine, and he's looking to go out and explore. But yet the kid kind of watches over the younger ones as they kind of live their lives on this planet. And they know of a legend of a location where a screecher lives in that area, and it kind of haunts the place there. So there's a little bit of folklore into this. If you were like watching this for the first time and you didn't know what Star Wars is about, you obviously would not think that this is a Star Wars like related episode just based on how the story progresses. But as they progress in there, it turns out that there is I guess a Sith, I would assume, or at least a Night Sister, that is actually in the mountain and chases the protagonist here that's in there. And through a bit of a battle there, the kid manages to steal the lightsaber from the Screecher and manages to destroy it, which ends with a surprise twist, which is apparently a Sith Master comes in and decides to recruit the kid and take him away into their journey, which was a bit of a twist, right? Because normally when in these stories, when like the evil is vanquished, then you have the appearance of a guide, of an older guide that wants to take this kid to develop them into something better. But then we're greeted with this Sith Master that now wants to recruit this kid as their apprentice, which I thought that was an interesting twist.
Yeah, and I think the bigger appeal to this is it feels a little bit closer to like a horror movie theme, right?
Yes, by far. Yeah.
And
yeah, those mountain sequences. Yeah.
We have not seen that right with it. And it's weird, like the animation style was not my favorite, I guess, is not my favorite piece of that, but like the actual story itself and how it like portrayed itself was amazing. Like I love that. Like I would give this like a 9.5, right? Like if the animation had been a little bit more my style, it would be like a 10. Like I really like this story and I love the twist end. Like that was my favorite part of that because it's like, oh shit, they just did a good thing. Oh, now she's an apprentice, and oh, she's not going to become a Sith Lord.
For me, I ranked it a little bit lower. I actually ranked it a 6, mainly because you're right. The animation style could have been a little bit better, but I get it. They're interpreting according to how they want to deliver the story, and they definitely get points for that. However, I think there could have been more they could have expanded on for it. Like, just a little bit more like the history of how that creature came to be, why exactly was this Sith mother waiting for Dahl to recruit him and stuff like it pretty much immediately, which makes me think that they were just orbiting in the area, just waiting for somebody to kill this creature, and then they're like, "Oh, they're gone. Let me go pick this kid up." So like it kind of felt a little bit rushed, but still, it was definitely that horror aspect of it. That's something that we don't see much in Star Wars at all, and I think that really helped redeem it. But compared to the other episodes in the seasons, it felt like a solid 6 for me.
All right. You're weird, but all right.
All right, so moving on to the next one here, episode 3, titled "In the Stars," which is a story of two sisters that are left behind. They're the last one of their kind there, and essentially the younger sister wants to follow in their footsteps of their mother, who essentially um, gave her life in order to help protect the two sisters, while the Empire came in and basically wiped out their race in order to set up a factory there. This actually felt very much to me like, and mainly because I've been listening to the book recently, but the last book of Thrawn for the people from Sunrise, how their whole mythology about leaving their physical body and joining the great beyond to heal their planet, like it kind of had that vibe for me. It was pretty cool. I believe this was one of the ones that I saw the interview from Team Chile for Star Wars Celebration, where they're talking about using their influences from real life events that happened in their country to write this particular episode. And there's definitely a lot of heavy symbolism between the hands and the pictures that they use to depict their fallen race and their mother becoming a star in the sky. I definitely love that bit of their culture that they incorporate as part of the symbolism in this particular episode, and it was really great to see like basic rebels trying to go in and win a small battle, which means a ton for them and not very much for the Empire. But it was really cool to see that story develop.
Yeah. And this one I felt was very action packed.
Yeah.
And this is that Wallace and Gromit
Yes.
animators, correct? Yeah, their
Yeah.
studio or whatever. Um, which I do like. I do like, and I do think the story had some merit, but it kind of felt a little generic to me in the aspect of it felt generic in the aspect of being Star Wars being Star Wars, right? Like
Right.
this is kind of an arc we've seen before. It was a little bit more unique. They did draw it out. I like the native style that they use for it. It was very bleak. Like this
Yes,
is like
it was.
they are like the last two between the Empire destroying absolutely everything.
And then hogging
Um,
all the water, which
and
is
then
crazy.
taking all the water. Like, and why? Why are you taking all the water? What is wrong with you? You know. So it felt a little tiny bit unrealistic in that aspect of it. So I give this a 7.5 ish. Um, I like the animation because it's Wallace and Gromit, and like I have a little soft spot for that, just because my kids always liked those growing up.
Yeah.
So like we've watched enough of that Wallace and Gromit and Shaun the Sheep type stuff. But I don't know. I did enjoy the episode, and I did enjoy the unique take on it, but I just felt the story was a little bland,
Yeah.
for my taste.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. The story could have been a little bit better. The action sequences probably is the best redeeming factor for it. But I did give it a 7 out of 10 for this one here. The stop motion capture with the claymation was really interesting to deliver this type of media for it. But yeah, it was definitely very enjoyable. I like this one a lot here. So moving on to episode number 4, which one? This one is called "I Am Your Mother." I felt like this was the Mother's Day episode of Star Wars Visions for real. Like it was just perfect. And for a second, when they introduced Wedge Antilles
Yep.
hosting this grand race part, I'm like, oh snap, we're about to see something great. And then I see a tweet like, I'm like, oh man, is this gonna be like Hera's little sister or something like that? And then we get this very kiddie comical sequence where this young girl Ani is basically hiding from her mother. That there's a family race that's going on, and all her other friends are kind of competing to go in there. We get some very comical scenes between the Wookiee racers. That was actually one of the funniest part was seeing the Wookiee family and like facing off against another family, and they're making fun of the Wookiee family, and you see the baby Wookiee tear off the arms of one of the dolls, and they just like close their hatch and like turn the other way. That was a clever little throwback to Let the Wookiee Win, which I enjoyed that a lot. But it was cool to see the like different starships that they had on there. One of them definitely looked like a First Order ship, which was Ani's rival, the black hair girl. It looked like a mix between like a Sith infiltrator and the like Kylo Ren shuttle type thing. Like it looked like a blend of that. That was kind of cool for that.
So this is the Wallace and Gromit episode. Sorry, this one
Yeah,
is right.
yeah,
I thought the
yeah.
last
It's
one was
same style. It's just it has a more kiddie tone than the previous episode, but still uses stop motion. So yeah.
gotcha. Yeah, so this one I liked because it felt like they were giving us some Hera type thing, and like the little dog type thing that they had,
Yeah.
the droid dog.
Yeah.
That was really cute. I like
Yeah.
that a lot. I like the celebration piece at the end and the themes of it. But again, this kind of felt a little childish for me.
Yeah.
But
Definitely
again,
very cute.
whatever. I don't know. Like whatever. I mean, it is Star Wars for Christ's sake. So, uh,
Yeah.
so overall, I give this. This one felt more like a 6 for me. It was cute. It was fun. It just wasn't my thing, I guess.
Yeah. I gave it a lower ranking. It was it's mildly entertaining, but really didn't do much for me either. I mean, my kid loved it, which was great. But beyond that, I think Screecher's Hollow did better in terms of story. For me, this was a 5 for me. So yeah.
All right.
And then going on to episode number 5. Now, I got to say, this one here is this. I feel that this was the best episode out of the entire season, but there was a very very close competition between this and another one of the episodes that we'll cover in a second here. So this one's called Journey to the Dark Head. This one is an anime style type episode where we get a mechanic who I guess grew up in a temple. I'm assuming it's not a Jedi temple, but it's like a Force user temple, I guess, where visions of what's coming into the future is rained down upon these rocks, and they record what's going to happen based on what they see on there. Now, it could be visions of the past or visions of the future, and what we know is that there's still a great Sith versus Jedi war going on currently at the time when this is happening here. She eventually makes it out to the Jedi Council, and she believes that if they can eliminate one of the dark side head on the top of this mountain, that this could greatly benefit the Jedi in affecting the outcome of the war there. And she's tasked to go on there. And then we get this great sequence where this young Jedi, I forget his name, is kind of meditating before his mission, and we have this sequence where we find out that a former friend of his kills his master as well as other Jedi, and she's on that precipice of turning to the dark side because of his hate and anger that he has towards Bichon, the antagonist in this one. And we get a great action sequence as they head over to the top of the mountain, and only to discover that the mountain only works because the energies of light and dark flow between the two heads, and that's what creates the images on there. And I thought that was actually a really great twist amongst the entire battle between the Jedi and Bichon, and I just absolutely love the animation and the story on this one.
Yeah, and I think this one is probably the most traditional Star Wars, right?
Right.
I will say I love this one. Like I give the hands down, I give this one a 10.
Yeah.
No questions asked. And I like and again, I won't lie and say I do like anime, so
Yeah.
part of the reason I liked Visions was because it brought the anime style into some of these things, right? Um, but this one really feels like Star Wars anime, very similar to like the very first, right?
Yeah. Or like Ninth Jedi from last season as well, which was fantastic.
Yeah, and I I I love this episode hands down.
Yeah, it had definitely a lot of action. You got invested into the characters really quickly, and that was the one of the things that like left me astonished. Right, is like you get introduced into these characters, and very quickly they tell you a very quick story, but very detailed on like what's motivating these characters. They get straight into the gist of the story of the mission that they're trying to accomplish, and they just do a really good job of developing these characters. And this episode is only like 19 minutes long, not including credits, but yet you're still invested on like what's going on and what's happening, and they do a fantastic job of delivering so much storytelling of what's going on in the background for these characters, while all the action is going on. And it is just hands down, it was the best one for me. I absolutely agree with you. 10 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I love this one. This was probably, I don't know. This might be my favorite. We'll see.
Yeah. So going on to the next one, episode 6, Spy Dancer. This was the other one that I felt was really good. I enjoyed it a lot. Now the animation style isn't as clean as crisp as the other ones that we've seen on the list here. Nonetheless, the story for this one was absolutely great. So we have a essentially an imperial frequented cabaret like bar that's run by this dancer, and she is secretly working with the Rebel Alliance by marking particular stormtroopers and such, to provide information to the rebels to let them know when certain raids are coming or when the Imperials are how they're moving and such. All while she's putting out this fantastic show for everybody else. And her daughter, who is a little bit more of a hothead, wants to directly confront the Imperials while she is attempting to just provide support and try to keep her out of it. She is about to start her final mission, which is to assassinate a what looks to me like a Grand Admiral, based on the clothing that they were wearing, and only comes to find that the person that she intended to assassinate was not the Grand Admiral. And we get a great flashback of her where she it looks like her village is being burned down by the Empire, and the Grand Admiral that she's intending to kill steals her baby boy and takes him away. And this fuels her motivation for revenge. The story takes a really great twist, as you know, after some really detailed combat, she realizes that the person that she intended to kill is really her son that was taken away from her so many years ago. And that just put a big plot twist for the entire episode, right? Because she's no longer able to do it, but she still retains that love and care for her son that was taken away from her. And we get to see a side that is mentioned a little bit in canon for how the Empire treats non-humans. You know, how they discriminate against other races, but it's never really directly referenced or seen in much of Star Wars. We definitely get to see that a lot in the Thrawn books, where the Imperials basically don't give anybody that's a human any sort of position or power here. And in this episode, we do see that the Grand Admiral that stole their kid intentionally had this kid mutilate himself, or mutilated the kid to remove his horns, and gave him an eye patch to hide his features as an alien in order for him to advance in the Imperial Navy. And that was something that is like huge. Like I thought that was a huge piece for them to address as part of this.
Yeah, and I think they take that traditional, look, right, with the Inquisitors and Jedis, right? They take that traditional look. I think that did I accidentally move the screen from that wrong episode?
Possibly. Yeah, you did. Go up one more. There you go. That's it.
Yep. And I think I don't know. My son loved this episode. He thought this one was the best out of all of them.
Yeah.
I don't know, because the animation style feels, I don't know, a little disjointed to me.
Yeah.
I will say I genuinely like the episode for its uniqueness. But this is like an 8 to me, between a 7 and an 8. And like I do like the reveal at the end, right? Like the reveal at the end where they stole their kid, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, welcome back, like you were taken apart and all these other things. And I think that piece of it brings home what happens, in Star Wars that we don't always see.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't get that feel all the time. You can tell her good night for all of us.
Yeah. Everybody says good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, go.
So cute. But so I don't know. Like I'm torn on this episode. Like if the first time I watched it, I did not like it very well. Minus the ending, but then afterwards I really started to enjoy it more. I liked 5 better than this one, personally.
Yeah. This for me was the other episode that I was like, wow, like this was like one of the best stories in the season so far. The animation style was a minus for me. But for me, the story and the sequence of how they kind of explain the story and the progression of it really help redeem it for me. So I would give this a 9, actually, because I really enjoyed it a lot.
All right, next one.
So this one here is one that we talked about briefly before at the beginning of everything here. This one is the Bandits of Golok here. This one is done out of a studio from India. And this one follows the story of these 2 adolescents or teenagers that are on the run and trying to make it over to another city. And as they progress, the younger sister ends up using her abilities in the Force. We see that she's Force sensitive and ends up getting herself and her brother in trouble and on the run from the Empire. This eventually results in an Inquisitor being deployed to hunt down this Force sensitive user. And as he's about to capture them, we see the appearance of a Jedi Master in the town of Golok. We have an awesome action sequence here between these 2 fighters here. And I got to say, like the way that they brought in again their cultural cues from the way how they dress each the Jedi and the Inquisitor, just using the accents from Hindi culture. It was awesome to see that incorporation in there, mixed in with like the spinning blade that we see from the Inquisitors from like Rebels and such, and then the method that the Jedi used to fight the Inquisitor with the dual blades, very similar to not Shakti, I forget her name, but Ayla Secura from Clone Wars. It was really cool to see that in this particular episode.
Yeah, and this episode, animation style aside, right? Like, let's forget about that for 30 seconds. So I like the animation style in this. This feels closer to home with like a more enhanced Rebels type thing. That's what this feels like. So I'll be honest, the animation style was a very big plus for me.
Yeah.
But the story that they developed here was hands down, I think, almost even better than 5 in the aspect of how they developed the story in the short amount of time.
Yeah.
And to me, this felt like the antithesis of was it the second episode, Screechers?
Yeah.
Yes. Like, this is the opposite. This is the Jedis doing the other thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Their
will,
quest. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, like, hands down to me, I give this episode a 10. I enjoyed this episode all the way around. The animation style is what pushed it over the top for me. But I feel that this was probably the best told story out of all of them in terms of how it developed the characters in the short amount of time. It didn't bite off too much. It didn't bite off too little. It brought in culture. And maybe I'm a little biased because I've been rewatching Miss Marvel with my daughter a little bit. So that I'm probably a little bit biased because of that. But to me, it felt
Yeah.
It felt like this hit every one of the boxes that needed to be hit, and we got to see a Grand Inquisitor of sorts again, right? So
Yeah.
like, it brings the Rebels feel back. And I have also been rewatching Rebels in anticipation for Ahsoka. So, I don't know. This brought back to me. To me, this episode just hands down is top notch.
Yeah.
I like the animation style of 5 better.
Yeah.
But that's because I like anime. But this animation style, because it relates closer to Rebels, it, like, just hands down this. Like, if you look at the details, and
Mhm.
even in that picture, you can see they get to keep their cultural piece of it, but they
Mhm.
still bring in the different, like, there's little Empire markings on his cloak, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And I felt that the attention to detail in this episode, hands down, is
Yes.
superior to everything.
Yes, by far. Yeah, I definitely really appreciated the attention to detail on every single piece of their clothing on there. The only thing that was a minus was just the beginning part in the train sequence that took a little bit too much to develop for me. But beyond that, that's the only negative that I had for that. This one was a solid 8.5 for me for this episode for the season here. So going on to episode number 9, or sorry, 8. It's titled "The Pit." This one hit hard. This one was tough to watch. And not saying that it's bad at all. No, it's not. But it's something that if you ever follow the history of of other cultures, how certain people are sent to labor camps and marginalized for the work, slave labor and stuff. Especially when you look at like some of the like South American countries, or you take a look at some of the countries in like minor Asia or Asia Minor, and see how people certain cultures or certain like creeds and stuff out there they're taken advantage of by the governments and stuff. Like, this hit really, really hard, right? Because we see this group that's forced into labor by the Empire to go mine for kyber crystals to help make the neighboring city much, much better. And the people in that city are basically completely ignorant to what the Empire is doing to these people. And then finally, when the mine is finally exhausted and they hit the bottom, the Empire just packs up and just leaves all these people stranded in that giant pit, which hit really, really hard. And then we get one of the characters here that manages to escape the pit, which actually had a very big Dark Knight Rises vibes when they're escaping the pit. Yeah, so I expected them to like chant Basha, Basha. So anyway, he manages to get out of the pit and go into the town and basically tell all the citizens of what's going on, only to immediately get silenced by the Empire and thrown back into the pit, where he unfortunately loses his life. His death causes the people to start questioning, what's going on, what has the Empire been doing all this time. And the Empire shows up in force to try to stop these people from seeing what is going on, to the point that they're about to open fire on all these civilians, and then the Empire decides to pull out and just let them be. And it's a hard-hitting message for this one, because for a hot second they look down at everybody there, and then they just back away. And you get that sense like they're just gonna just abandon them to their fate. And then finally help comes in the form of a transport that helps get everybody out of there. And then we find that the little girl who kept the piece of Kuiper, it starts singing to her, signifying that she has become force sensitive, or it has been force sensitive. And yeah, that was it was a hard episode. It was a heavy episode.
Yeah. And I will also give this episode a 10. Like I feel, to me, like, again, I still really like 5, right? You know, and 7, but to me, this story is the story people don't want to talk about. And if you think about it, I don't care whether George Lucas originally wanted to talk about like colonialism on this level, but what the white man has done is eradicated culture from the earth. And this episode is a highlight of how Star Wars to some extent has had that conversation even back in the 70s. Even in the 70s, when it wasn't like completely woke and understanding of all the other things going on in other countries, this happens. And the difference is like, oh, when you're on a moon, a Ryloth moon, right? And like, do you connect as well with people that are on Ryloth? You probably don't, right? You're not a Twi'lek, right? But you can connect, but it's not visually as connecting. This episode just basically said, here, look, it's a bunch of minorities that they stuck in a pit and enslaved, and then gave them enough food and water to not die right away, and to basically do a self-experiment on how to kill themselves, right? Like, it's insane. Like, like, this is very reminiscent of what it would be like if you took a death camp and decided you're going to create an experiment. That's what this felt like. And
they basically dug their own grave, basically.
Yeah.
They made them dig their own grave.
For profit, for capitalism, for other people. And like, I cried for this episode, because this episode to me feels and rings so true to our current societies. And maybe we don't make people dig holes and leave them in there anymore. But we also, in America, and I guess I'm going to get a little on a soapbox here. In America, we don't support minorities and the poor in the same way that we could. As a first world nation, we should be doing a million things more for people. And this episode highlights all of that. And I think the tense part at the end, right, where you don't know whether they're going to kill everybody or not, like, shows you the true selfishness of these type of people. They knew, even with all their guns, that the citizens would kill them all. That's what it's telling you. And this goes back to when we talk about, you know, the Black Lives Matter riots and all these other things that have happened throughout our country. When you go back to that, the people have the power. We just need to take up and unify as a community to take back the injustices that people in power want to lord over us. And I've said this before, and it's probably not surprising because I'm a pretty out there individual, but I have a 401k, and I'd be willing to give it all up in anarchy if it meant we could create a society that had equal shares for everyone, so that we didn't have people suffering. Because I'll tell you, it's horrible. Some of the things, the atrocities that happen. And that's just our country. Now walk out to all these other countries where people are enslaving other people because they don't value the lives of humans. I don't know. Like, I guess I went off on a little bit of a tangent, and I apologize.
No, it's okay, man. I mean, it definitely brought all those themes out, and it is definitely a heartbreaking episode. And you know, the way it ends too, with her just being force sensitive, just leaves that glimmer of hope that she can hopefully make the change, right? Because she now has a power to hopefully make that change for her and her people. Story wise, this was probably the hardest hitting and the best story, I want to say. Animation was there as well. Definitely not an action packed episode like we saw with number five, but for me, this was a solid 9.5, very close to 10 for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So going on to the last episode here that we have, this one is Au's Song, which focuses on a couple of miners here that are also mining for kyber crystals. And oddly enough, the majority of those crystals appear to be corrupted. They're all red crystals that they're digging out of this mine, which is interesting, right? Because normally when we think about the kyber crystals as they're being mined, they're usually colorless or they have like a slight hue of like blue or yellow or green, but you never see a mine of crystals that are primarily red. And we see this girl Au, who her song causes the crystals to get purified. So much so it's almost like it's a talent that she has that's imbued with the force that helps purify crystals. And she ends up having to, her dad constantly tells her not to sing because it can cause a big disturbance for whenever she's near a kyber crystal. And she ends up inside of a mine where she ends up trapped and encased up in a cave full of these red kyber crystals. And while her father's trying to save her and execute her or get her out from that area, they're being pursued by a monster that lives within the cave. And by her being able to use the song, she's able to purify all the kyber crystals are in there, and it's a nice, decent story for this one here.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little torn on this one, right? I did like the uniqueness of having the red crystals because you don't see that. And I did like the animation style to some extent for this. And I did enjoy the story, but it was harder. I was less captivated, I guess, because of the lack of dialogue.
Yeah.
And that's a personal thing. That's not really a dig on what it is, right? You know, like this is I don't want to dig on this as an episode, but I had a harder time following it than some of the other ones and staying as interested. I did, like I said, I do like the animation style, and I did like the way the story was told. Basically her being able to lend her voice to make changes, and they have to, like embrace that piece of it. So I don't know. I would give this like a 6.5 to me. Like I thought it was good, but it's not. I don't know. Like I felt the story was good and the animation was good. It had a harder time holding my attention because of the style the episode presented itself in.
Yeah, I agree. The lack of dialogue did hurt it a little bit. I get that they're trying to convey a story based on the girl's song and just her journey into it, but because of that lack of dialogue to kind of further bring out the personality, her and the characters around her, kind of left you wanting for a little bit more, and it didn't give a huge return on it as well. But yeah, I mean, for me, it was about a 6. I mean, it was a great concept for how they were going to do it, but I guess the constraints of the time that they had to deliver the story kind of left it feeling flat. But yeah, it was a 6 for me.
Yeah, and like I said, I think the idea behind it is great, and I do like the creative aspect behind it. Like it's definitely a different take, and it's very bold. This is a very bold take that we don't see very often. I don't know. I feel that they should have left the pit as the last one. Like, give me that as the closer.
Yeah.
But
this should have been more of a mid-season episode, honestly.
Yeah, and maybe because they drop them all at the same time, it's inconsequential. I guess, right? But I don't know. This one did not hold my attention the way the other ones did, I guess.
Yeah. And with that, I mean, what are your thoughts so far for season 2? Better than season 1?
So I will say overall, I liked it better, hands down. I like the Sith theme.
Yeah.
So there's that. Like that's a little bit more me. I like more evil things, I guess. And so I like the Sith thematic. I felt art wise, mostly it was more diverse than before.
Yeah.
Before had a more aggressive anime style to it, which I liked about it, and that's the only reason I ever actually watched Visions, because it's not canon. So I didn't care about it when it first came out. We didn't watch it at all. Like, I don't know, for like a couple months. And finally my son's like, well, I don't really like Star Wars, which in my house, he's just have been, dragged out and quartered. But like he doesn't care that much about Star Wars, but he was like, he likes anime, and so he wanted to give it a try, and we enjoyed it together. I actually went back and just recently rewatched season 1 after I watched season 2. And I would say overall, I feel season 2 is better at telling the story. It was better at giving a variety, like truly giving us a variety of content from different paths. So I feel season 2 was better overall, than season 1.
Yeah.
Out of like, I would give this an 8.5 out of 10 overall.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely where I stand for the rating for it. I think that there were a lot more episodes here that delivered more of a story in a more compressed time, that kept you engaged with the characters more than so than what we saw in episode or season 1. And I think for that aspect, being able to within the same similar time constraints and, using your animation style to really accent, the culture that comes out from behind the artist's history and blend it with the theme of Star Wars. I think they did a far better job season 2 so far for it than what we've seen. And I'm just hoping that we get a season 3 pretty soon.
Yeah. And I don't know when we'll see it. Who knows? I mean, it's kind of one of those things where this felt a little bit more surprising how fast it came than normal. But I guess when you have a bunch of other studios doing your work for you, you can, you can make it easier on yourself.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, thank you all for joining us for this episode of Universe Extended, episode 28, reviewing Visions Season 2 in its entirety. We will be back next week, possibly with a Bad Batch review for Season 2, depending on JJ. I don't know. I think we might do that. Have you finished watching Bad Batch?
Nope, I'm on the season finale now, actually.
All right. So JJ has until next Saturday to finish that, so we can watch, or we can review season 2 of Bad Batch. And I do think we should do that, because I don't think we need to take each episode and break it down by itself. I think we could just spend a little bit longer and review the whole thing. So that's what we'll do.
Barring points. If points released next week, I think we're going to spend more time doing that than anything. But yeah, Bad Batch is definitely on the docket for the next time. Yeah.
So if you like what we do and you want to support us, you're welcome to subscribe here, follow us here, subscribe to us on YouTube, subscribe to us on your favorite podcatcher. And if you want to be even more generous, you can donate to our PayPal or join us on Patreon. Planning Phase Syndicate. This is our Universe Extended. This is just our Star Wars discussion. This is JJ and I having fun talking about the reason why we play Star Wars X-Wing miniatures. Thank you all. Have a good night, and we will be back next week at 2100 UTC, 2100 Eastern time.
Have a good night, everybody.
Have a good night.